Hello! Here to talk to you about psychosis today. Psychosis is where the word psycho actually comes from. So, this will be fun. Psychosis is actually a loss of contact with reality. Includes disorganized thoughts and speech, thoughts that jump between unrelated topics. Sounds like ADHD, but it's a much more intense version. False beliefs that are not based in reality, delusions, especially ungrounded fear or suspicion. False beliefs about what is taking place or who one is, delusions again. Hearing, seeing, or feeling things that are not there. That's where I come in. I can see, hear, and mostly feel, the dead. Not really anybody I've ever known. I have no connection to my family, except for one incident that I'll get into. So that's how psychosis manifests itself in me. And I definitely have unfounded fear, suspicion, but we'll talk about my paranoia at a different time. Currently, my psychosis, which since being on mood stabilizers and being off the bad medication, isn't even an issue. Which is nice, because my room in my place in Pittsburgh is in a basement. I actually wake up sometimes in the middle of the night expecting the psychosis to be manifesting itself. So it's creepier than a basement. But it hasn't. So it's kind of nice to wake up and expect something and then nothing is going on. I can go back to sleep and it's great. I've always had a connection with being able to feel the deceased. Feel them in the sense of I know where they're at. I know their intensity level. Their intensity level is how much of their energy they're projecting onto the living realm, I guess is the best way to put it. Their level of intensity as far as how tuned in they are to me. Generally, they're kind of various levels of indifference, some paying attention, some not, but a lot of them, about 60 to 70%, as soon as they find out that I know, they latch on to me pretty quick. And I can never say they're good or evil, but some are more intense than others, and the more intensity generally means negative, is the only way to put it. I can't say good or bad, good or evil. None of that stuff really applies from what I've seen. One of the earliest manifestations was when I was in Tennessee as a child, because apparently my mom hated us enough to drag my sister and my brother and myself to Tennessee. We were driving down the road, look out the window into a little old cemetery, and sure as shit, see a guy walk about 10 feet from one part to the other, disappears behind a tree, and I know for a fact it was one of the other people, because the difference of feel that you get from living people from the other people is absolutely unmistakable in someone like myself, the way that it manifests. There is no, like, oh, I saw something. It could be a human, it could be, the other, I call them other people, it could be one of them. The feeling is different. It's the difference between an airplane and, like, a ladybug. Like, it is unmistakable. So I knew right away, but luckily we were in the car far enough, didn't really bother me too much. And then, that was one of the first visual manifestations. I had felt them my entire life. I don't ever have a memory of not being afraid of it, so it's always been there. Later on, there's always been on and offs, but some of the ones that I remember the most, one of the biggest series and episodes of all of my psychosis manifesting itself was when I lived in a house on 21st Street in Richmond, Virginia. I lived there with my fiance at the time, and it was an older house, turn of the century, no big deal. I've been in plenty of old houses, felt some things, some not. When I first walked in, I definitely had a feeling that there was something there. But like I said, I've just kind of been used to it, and we were in a tight crunch. We had to move, like, right away, so we went ahead and rented the house. The first thing I noticed, the house was very long, very it was relatively narrow but very long, and it had something added on to the back, like in the 60s or something. The first thing I noticed was when I was in the kitchen, I would put something down, and then it was, as soon as I turned around, it was somewhere else. And at first, you can, you think about like, oh, I'm just not paying attention, I'm trying to follow these directions. I decided to play, Betty Crocker, so I was new to that, so I knew all that stuff. But there was about a 10 to 12-year-old black boy, and he would, deceased, he would pick up things and put them somewhere else. It was just like a game he liked to play, and I eventually started playing it with him. I would put something down and then walk away, and I'd turn around, and sure as shit, he had taken it from the counter and put it on top of the washer. The washer was like 20 feet away from the kitchen counter, but same area. And I would put it back again, and then turn around. Something I didn't need, I was just playing with him. He was really cute. That was one of the first playful child ghosts, or child others, that I had encountered. Mostly children stare. They just, in the cemetery, stare. Like, they have a very lost, I guess, feeling about them. Vacant and lost. Anyway. And he would run up and down the hallway connecting from the front door all the way to the back of the house. He would run up and down. I'd hear pit, 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 pit. Stuff like that. He was very carefree, strangely enough. He was very childlike. Kind of fun. There was upstairs in my roommate's room, which was right above the living room, you would hear furniture being moved around, but it was larger furniture on a wood floor. Well, the whole place was carpeted except the kitchen, so having larger furniture moving around upstairs didn't make sense. Like, the furniture that was moving didn't exist. The floors in which they were being moved around didn't exist or weren't the current ones, so that was always fun. That always happens, when I'm by myself, of course. I'm just sitting there watching TV, and it's just moving around upstairs. Didn't really bother me that much, just because, I've had this my whole life, moving furniture, not a big deal. And then eventually, there was a man and a woman I would hear upstairs, in my roommate's room, actually, and in the master bedroom, my ex-fiancé and I's room, and I would hear a conversation between them. Never knew what they were saying, couldn't quite figure it out. Very muffled, wasn't an argument, seemed serious, but just indifferent. Nothing serious. And anytime I would try to sneak up the stairs to hear it further, which on rare occasions, because, like I said, I'm scared of this shit, it would stop when I got closer to the room. So I just kind of grew to accept that. The cool thing about that is it happened, we lived there a year, it happened probably about twice a month. Sometimes it happened like 2-3 times a week. It was very sporadic. Sit in the living room, and fiance turns the TV off. And he's perked up like that, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, tell me he hears it. Tell me he hears it. Do you hear that? And I didn't want to say anything, because if I did, I would have jumped up and down and be like, yes, my whole fucking life. Tell me I'm not crazy. But didn't want to lean in that direction, so I was like, what do you hear? And he goes, it sounds like there's somebody in Ted's room. And I'm just like, okay, it's not a manifestation of my brain, this is real. Okay, mixed feelings, like, oh my god, I'm not crazy, and then B, there's dead people in my house. So, he heard it, described it, I felt a little okay about it. Little okay in the sense that I wasn't making it up, but not okay because I now somehow have fucking contact with the dead. Or at least the ability to be severely irritated by them. So, fast forward. The first month we lived there, we didn't sleep in the master bedroom. No real reason why, but after a month we were sleeping on the couches, and my fiance at the time was 6'6". So sleeping on the couches was not comfortable for us. We didn't have a pull-out bed. So eventually, after a month of back problems, we're like, why don't we sleep in the bedroom? Nice queen-size pillow-top mattress, nice clean master bedroom, and we did. And the very first night was the first night I ever had a panic attack. I woke up, like, just heart rate, just pounding, extremely, hot, sweaty, full, I woke up straight into full fight or flight reflex. I wasn't dreaming or anything like that, like, prior to waking up. And I woke up, and I looked up, and the only way I can describe what I saw is kind of like some sort of highly organized, free-floating scaffolding, but made out of some sort of organic bone material. Like, a lot of bones is the only way to put it. And I saw this, and it didn't look like it was attached to the walls or had a stand. It was just this elaborate system. It was very weird. Scaffolding, like it was not just thrown about and not just a giant living organism. It was crazy. But the weird thing is when I would look, if I looked over here, it would, sit here, and it was moving a little bit, and then if I switched my gauge, the whole thing would like rearrange itself pretty quick, very mechanical-like, which is weird because, like I said, it was organic in nature. So that happened, and I'm just sitting there like, you're kidding me. What the hell is this? And then I looked over again, and the whole thing shifted, and did about 2 more times after that. The whole time, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, this isn't real. I'm dreaming. There's no way. I've never experienced anything like that before. But I'm in this full-blown panic attack, fight or flight, so I close my eyes, open it, still there, close my eyes, open it, still there, close my eyes, and I open it, and it's gone. I'm like, thank God. Now I can go back to sleep, because I'm just going to pretend this didn't happen. And then there is something emanating from the closet door, which is about 5 feet away from my head. And it's just a feeling coming from it. And I look over, and it's an older door, like a heavy wooden door. I mean, who knows when it was there. It's got like decades and decades of paint, so you can barely make out the detail on it. It's just an old door. So the paint on the door starts like peeling off and out like it's on fire. You ever see those like fast cams where the paint's just like peeling out the whole thing, and it starts browning and turning black, but there's no fire, there's no heat coming from this thing. It's not, the door is not turning to embers. It's just this bizarre process it's going through, and there's no heat, nothing. And it's not happening to anything else, not the door frame next to it, not the walls, nothing. So I close my eyes, open it, still there, close my eyes, open it, still there, close my eyes, open it, still there, close my eyes, elbow the fiancé next to me, and then of course when he rolls around, he's half asleep because he didn't wake up in a fight or flight state of panic. Looks at me, tells me I'm crazy, rightfully so, goes back to bed. The door's already gone. Well, the whatever was going on with the door was gone. And I literally told myself that none of that was real and went back to sleep. Normally, if I have an experience, I can't go back to sleep because there's the dead. And I get to experience them. That was so far out of my realm of possibly being able to accept, I fell back asleep, which is crazy. Never saw the scaffolding again. But that door in that area of that room, whenever I would go up the stairs just to do the laundry, put my makeup on, and get closer to that part of the room, the intense angry, malicious energy that came off of it was unbearable. It was only that spot in the house. Even if I stood second on the bottom floor underneath it, didn't feel it. It was just going up the stairs. And the reassuring thing, because I struggled with this my whole life, this is what crazy people say, even though I feel like I'm not insane. was that I wasn't the only one who felt it, but I felt it 100 times worse than everyone else. Fiancé at the time, I never told people anything because not necessarily I didn't want them to think that I was crazy, as much as I would like a sign that somebody else can experience this, and that I'm not just making it up, as well as I'm not leading someone to just agree with me or lead to the same conclusions. So when he told me about that, he was just like, I just don't like the room. He's like, there's something about your side of the room, it bothers me. We lived there for about a year, and we slept in the living room for about 80% of it. About 60%. Eventually, I looked into a bunch of, like, American Indian and pagan ways to deal with spirits and stuff like that, and it worked enough. Like, it's kind of like my medication, my mood stabilizers. It brings me down to a manageable level. It doesn't clear anything up. So that worked pretty well. The only thing is like, you take sage and, like, burn it around the room. I had to do that every day. Every day. It didn't last but 24 hours. Like, every day before we had to go to bed, I had to do that, and shit with rocks and all this stuff, which I have no faith in. But at that point, I was so sick of sleep on the couch, I don't care if I had to cut a chicken's head off and drain the blood and, I don't know, sacrifice virgins or something. I was pretty ready to do it anyway. For fun and to get rid of the ghost. So that was tough. And it was an older guy. Not obese, but definitely overweight. And he was just angry. Just nasty things poured out of him. And like I said, they latch on to me. And with him and all of his anger and energy, latched right on to me. Which, they pick on me, is the way to put it, and this one definitely did. Next part of it was laying down in the living room one day, had to go do something, I wanted to take a nap. Get woken up, fiancé is like, hey, we gotta go do X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay. I look up, TV's pretty big screen TV, I look at the TV, and there's a head, same, like, you know, horizontal, laying horizontally like I am, no body, no nothing, but kind of muted, kind of like, you know, the TV when it's off, but it's still very vivid. And I'm looking at this, and it had eyes. The other people don't have eyes. It's like a void. It's a lack of eyes, more so than their eyes are removed. It's really weird. It's very, very strange. I guess it's like a concept of a black hole. But hold on, my nose is killing me. And so I'm looking at this thing, and it had eyes, and it's looking at me. It's not any sort of, no expression, but definitely very, very real. And looking at me, like, it's not just staring past me, it's making eye contact with me, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm just confused. And I was like, turn the TV off before we go. He's like, the TV's been off. I'm like, okay, this is... I just woke up into this, so I'm like, am I still dreaming? Am I seeing dead people? And I look behind, and there's like the Jolly Roger flag with like a pirate flag. God, my nose. And then I look over, and the reflection of the pirate flag is above the head, and the head's still looking at me. Like I said, there's nothing else. It's not severed. There's no blood and guts. It's very just clean cut. It's just there. So and it's just looking at me. It doesn't blink. Very blank stare, but very intent on me. And, I decided that I am just not going to fucking deal with that. That is not my problem. So I got up and I walked out and went to go do whatever it is I had to do. Some of these, I mean, this is probably this is like, what, 26, 27 years old? I got sick of that shit quick. Well, I mean, not quick, 27 years. Sometimes I'm not dealing with this. So that was the 21st Street house. I guess the next thing we'll talk about is cemeteries. Cemetery is one of my favorite places to go as a child. Terrified of. I hated going by them in a car. I hated knowing where one was at. Even if we drove by one, like on a trip, we lived in Florida from Florida to Virginia, if we drove by one, I thought about it the whole time. Like, I didn't have a fear of bridges, I didn't have a fear of anything, but I had a fear of anywhere the dead were. Reasonably so when you're a psychotic child. But cemeteries, although eventually I learned to embrace it, like, when the bipolar would get completely out of control, and just the mania would kind of be, mixed, I never really had severe depression, as much as I had mixed states, and it definitely had the crash, but the mania was always there. Always there. So, I would go to cemeteries because I eventually liked trying to read into what it is I had, or what it is. I guess most people just don't walk around being able to feel, and be able to classify and somewhat see dead people. Just felt like that's maybe not everybody's life. So I'd go to cemeteries, and there's a couple different things in cemeteries. Number one, there are dead people. Reasonably so. And like I said, you don't ever get a good or evil. Like, it's not a human. They look human, with the exception of the eyes, but they don't act human, like their mannerisms aren't human. They're very muted as far as their movements, their actions. It's very, very, I don't know, it's very toned down, like they're very stiff, which could be related to, or a joke could be made because they're stiff in the ground, but no, it's very robotic, I guess is the way to say, mechanical. Their level of intensity differs. Some of them are completely indifferent to the living. Just couldn't care less. Some of them are aware of the living. A lot of them become a lot more aware. Like I said, they latch on to me. As soon as they know that I know, they go right after me. Some of them are definitely interested. Like, I'll be walking around and they're just existing, and then they see me and they stare. That's the number one thing in cemeteries. They stare. Like, they're just, like I said, it's very porcelain, emotionless look on their face, but very intent. That's the thing I can get the most, is their intensity. Like I said, no eyes, like a void, very creepy. And then there's the ones that fixate on me, and the ones that fixate on me, in cemeteries, they don't seem to be able to move around a lot, at least that's not what I've seen, and if they do, it's very short distances, like, and I don't think they're necessarily tied to their grave, which is strange, but I've definitely noticed that they're not tied to their specific grave, but they are tied to particular areas. I don't know, just what I've seen. And then, this is where it gets strange. There's something called the workers. The workers are not human. They never were human. I don't know what they look like, but I know that they're hunched. They have elongated legs. This is the concept of them. A lot of this I had to add to because there was something I sensed and felt, but I totally didn't understand, so I had to apply my understanding. What I know about them is they're generally half the size of a person, but it's because they're hunched for whatever reason. I don't know if it's elongated appendages and they're crouched over. Like, I don't know what they look like, but all I know is if they stood up, they'd be about as tall as a human, maybe a little bit taller, but they're... And I call them the workers because they're continuously running around. They are all aware of me. Like I said, the living, or excuse me, the not so living anymore, the dead people will generally have a level of interest or paying attention, intensity towards me and the living in general. The workers always have the same level of intensity. They're aware of me, and they're the ones, they're continuously moving around. Those are the ones, like I said, the workers, that's what I call them, because they seem to be doing something. I don't know if it's individual tasks or if they're working for some sort of larger demon corporation. I don't know. And I don't think they're demons. I don't believe in that shit. But they have a motive, and they're only found in cemeteries. I've never seen them anywhere else. Older cemeteries have a lot of them. A lot of them. And I guess that's the best way to explain them. Like I said, what I've put onto them to help me understand it is, it would be like they have longer leg appendages, but, they're kind of bent up, and this is how they would run around. This is not what I've seen. This is not how it is. This is just how I process it in my brain, because I can't just be like, oh, they're hunched over. Like, how? Their back, their legs? And I'm like, I don't know. I should draw them. I can draw their body types. I don't know what their faces look like. It's very weird. Their faces are like the void of the eyes of the dead people, but I can tell, like, where they're looking at. I don't know, their faces are still 50-50. Maybe I'll go off of medication and spend a week in a cemetery. I'm not going to do that, I'm just kidding. And then there is something I've only experienced once, and it was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. I called it the bell. It was probably about 20 feet tall, and it was bell-shaped, like that, but 360. And whenever it would go, wherever it was going, it was slow moving. The workers were going insane. Like, this was their center of focus when it was around. I don't know what it is, but they were all over this thing. Like in a documentary, when monkeys, like an enemy is coming, they all get really frantic. It's just like that. They are extremely frantic, and it's something of importance, but it's not like the workers and the dead people, where it's like creatures or sentient type beings, and I use that loosely in this whole thing. It is horrifying feeling. It is not human. It is not understandable. I don't know what it is. I don't know what its purpose is. But the feeling you get from it makes you sick to your stomach. I've only experienced it once. I've never experienced it again in the same place. I've never experienced it again anywhere else. I was in a pretty bad place then. My psychosis was pretty through the roof then. So, I mean, my mind could have made it up. Or it could have been, one of the times that it was definitely a beacon. The signal was strong. So that's basically how that goes. That's all of my psychosis, really. There's a couple things here and there, maybe I'll put on a later video, but that literally explains all of it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Now that I know what it is, I was just introduced to the word psychosis like 3 weeks ago. 3-4 weeks ago? I don't know. In therapy, they were like, yeah, manifestations of psychosis. I'm like, what is that? And it's like hearing things that aren't there, seeing things that aren't there, and feeling things that aren't there. And my whole life, just in one moment, in one word, made sense. I am 100% this disorder. I have type 1, which is, you can't say worse, but there's 3 types. There's type 1, type 2, and then there's the other one, which I forgot the freaking name. I'll look it up in a minute, or I'll type it in. Mine is the most extreme because we exist in mania. Mania is hyperproductivity, really high levels of energy, way too high self-importance, unrealistic views about yourself and what's going to happen, like you're going to be an astronaut, rock star, doctor, veterinarian one day, and, find the cure for AIDS. And I have an even more severe version of that, which is rapid cycling. But rapid cycling, strangely enough, is mostly in women versus men. Like, rapid cycling is almost exclusively a women's issue in bipolar. So, not only am I crazy, but I'm a woman, which apparently comes with its own crazy. So type 1, rapid cycling, and the level of my type 1 is really intense. So as I'm learning all about this disorder, every bit of my life has been this disorder. Every waking moment, now that I learn more and more, I am this disorder. Very little that I've done has not been a product or driven by this disorder. Which is crazy to think of. To think of that, I mean, it's very much a part of me. I mean, I haven't been, that's just who I am. Most people are like, oh, you're not that disease. That's fine. If you want to feel that way, it's different for everybody. I am this disease, 100%. More so than most people. But the good thing is type 1, and as manic as I've been, is the easiest to cure. It's the worst to have, but it's the easiest to manage if you put forth the effort, which is really awesome. So I no longer see dead people. I no longer hear them. I no longer feel them, which is great. Although when I do go to cemeteries, I still get a light feeling. Just that it's not 100% gone, but it's insignificant, to say the least, which is really nice. In all of this, I'm going to actually start drawing and painting pictures of the others. I can't paint a picture of the workers because I can't get a clear view of what they are, but I'm going to start putting the faces of the others up. That's another good thing with this this disorder is artistic ability, creativity. It just goes hand in hand with this disorder, which is awesome. So now that I'm under control, no longer seeing dead people, I'm going to actually create worlds and images 100 times darker than I've been able to see and that anybody can imagine, which is great. I am now an optimist who wants to create horribly dark things. So, well, that's my 33-minute rant. I appreciate if you stuck through it, and if not, don't blame you. I'm a pretty short attention span myself. If you can relate to this, please let me know. If you have any questions, I'm an open book. I have no problem answering anything. That's just the way it is. Thank you very much. Take care.